Yes, excellent collection. Sing it. Okay, a couple more minutes here before we start today's session. All right, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and start today's session. Chat up. Today may be a short session, because I have to take care of some things with the family today, but we'll see how far we get today. And let's open up with reciting the prayer for spiritual workers, and then we'll move into announcements and then today's material. Prayer for spiritual workers. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their limitations, would smite me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their weakness, would not heed me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their ignorance, would defile you through me. And I ask, Almighty God, O wondrous power, that your strength may be given to me now, so that I might be fortified by this, so that I might go forward bravely into the world, and despite reception, send forth my love of thee throughout all races of man. Almighty God, give me the power and strength to rise above my karmic weakness, the deficiencies in the pattern of my evolution, so that I might evolve and become stronger, I, and even stronger, in thy everlasting light. O God, thy will be done. All right, welcome everyone to our continuation of the review and celebration of the new book released by Mr. Nehemiah Davis, The Miracle Kit Behind the Power of Prayer, the mystic knowledge of manipulating the subtle and cosmic energies of prana through prayer techniques. Today we should finish up chapter 5. We stopped at consciousness last time. And then after we finish up chapter 5, we will go into, I guess, an initial review of the first 5 chapters. Chapter 1 is an introduction, but then chapter 2, that's when we, or chapter 1 is a general introduction to mystic techniques, and chapter 2 is the ancient mystic knowledge of prayer in modern times. That's when we start talking about prayer. We may finish only 1 and 2 today, and then go on to 3, 4, and 5 next time as a review before we start chapter 6, just because I don't have, time is limited today. Announcements are the same. We'll finish reading the book, and then by, let's see, mid-September, so maybe next week or the following week, I will have some details to share with you regarding the Mystic Prayer Technique workshop and seminar. I'm planning to host to cover chapter 9, which details the Mystic Prayer Technique, as well as a workshop to practice technique and employ a couple prayers, specifically the 12 blessings for both long distance healing and prayer manipulation, energy manipulation, as well as where we may do a little bit of maybe not contact healing. We may not do contact healing, but we may do healing, remote healing, as part of the workshop and practicing the mystic prayer technique. So do stay tuned for that. They'll either come next week or the following week, once I get all the details hammered out. And then same thing with the Florida group for the Dear Society. We're continuing our weekly 12 blessing services, both online and in person, and holding our regular commemoration services. All right, now, some of you have sent emails and requests for access to a couple of private lectures. I have received them. I actually just saw them today. So I would do that between today and tomorrow and grant you access to the videos you've requested. If you have any questions or comments throughout today's session, you can feel free to post them in the chat and we'll address them for you. And anything that we do not address in the session, you can send us an email and we'll send that out to you, respond to your email as well. All right, so let's begin. Well, if there's any questions or comments before we start today's session. If not, then we'll go right into today's material, picking up with consciousness and finishing up our discussion with chapter 5. And then we'll start our review of chapters 1 and 2, mainly looking at the section headings and some of the handouts that were, or the illustrations in the book, which are not clear with this version of the book. I'm in the physical version, like this one, and I think the electronic version, the handouts illustrations are clear, but it's just with this proof copy that we have from the publisher that the illustrations, the figures are low resolution, so it's hard to see as you're reading through the text. And so for chapter 2, where the author starts utilizing figures, illustrations, I pulled up those handouts and diagrams that we have from previous classes, and we'll look at those in place of the ones that were not clear in this particular reading. And that'll pretty much be our review for 1 through 5 and going forward with subsequent chapters, as well as address any questions that may have come up as we were studying the material. And you guys get a chance to ask them during the respective reading. So you can email those questions and comments to us, and we'll answer them during review sessions as well. All right, so let's start. Consciousness. The manifestation of consciousness is brought about through the intersection of Pingala and Ida nadis. The chakras are the vortex centers where Pingala and Ida nadis intersect and manifest various levels of consciousness. This consciousness operates on all levels, and the chakras represent the primary existence from which it operates. As stated earlier in the book, the soul configures the Shakti power into the Kundalini consciousness that blocks the door to Sushumna, which manifests the basic flow of Shakti power that is separated into the two parts called Pingala and Ida. Kundalini then becomes the instrument that the soul works through. In its Kundalini dormant state of consciousness, it sings a song that manifests basic consciousness to all levels of existence. This is done by Kundalini sending a sound vibration up through the chakra system that creates the right Shakti configuration to manifest the vehicles of expression that the soul can work through in order to experience basic mental, subtle, and astral consciousness, and eventually gross physical consciousness. These sound vibrations leave the dormant state of Kundalini and modify itself at the solar plexus chakra, the heart chakra, and finally the throat chakra, where the total power to manifest basic consciousness is brought about by the fourth aspect of sound. The Ida nadis, mental powers, and Pingala nadis, vital powers, intersects at and through the chakras, and it turns on the switch which allows consciousness to manifest on any level of existence. A brief statement on man's mind. Before we go on, let us study the mind as the metaphysician sees it in operation with this high state of consciousness, always acting as the backbone or background of all levels of the mind. The mind of man is broken up into three distinct parts that the metaphysician recognizes as the functional components of man's mind. We have taken the liberty to describe these three states of mind: supraconscious mind, subconscious mind, and the conscious mind of man. The supraconscious mind. The superconscious mind is that part of man's consciousness that represents the higher self of man. It is that part of consciousness that communicates directly with the soul and assists it in managing the lower levels of consciousness. This supraconscious mind is the result of the nadi system being used to place limitation on the manifested consciousness, brought about by the manifested portion of the soul. The nadic system serves to split up this consciousness into three major components, which is called man's mind. The soul is enshrined in the nadic system. As stated above, the soul creates this web-like system around itself to serve as an instrument to break up its consciousness into various levels of consciousness. This web-like system, created by the nadis, distributes bits of the soul's consciousness throughout this web system. This creates points of consciousness that are entry points to higher planes of existence. The superconscious mind is the highest level of consciousness that is being created and split up throughout the nadi system. The split is the background behind and the source of all power for the soul. I'm sorry, the spirit. The spirit is the background behind and the source of all power for the soul. And the soul is the background behind and the source of all power for the supraconscious mind. The soul is also the link to the spirit. The supraconscious mind is the background for man's mind and the canvas that it uses to create its expression of life. The superconscious mind is the instrument that the soul uses to control the other tools of expression used by the soul. The work of the superconscious mind is to assist the soul in managing the involutional and evolutional process of man's existence. The supraconscious mind is like the great devata of man's mind and body. It is that part of man's consciousness that he ascends to through his evolution. It is that part of man's consciousness that he activates through the rise of the great power of Kundalini. The supraconscious mind is that part of the mind that man will work toward achieving over lifetimes of reincarnation. This supraconscious mind is a state of mind that saints and yogi adepts or masters work from. The superconscious mind is the state of man's mind that represents the raised state of consciousness where the soul operates from in order to shape and mold the lower states of consciousness. It is this state of mind that acts as a point of consciousness under karmic authority to direct and pressure man towards conformity to God's divine laws and purpose. The superconscious mind is the background substance for all mind components. This portion directs the action of mind by setting limitations on mind dictated by the laws of karma. The superconscious mind is that part of mind that is locked away from basic man's common use and only pierces through as inspiration or intuition. The full aspect of the supraconscious mind can only be realized and controlled by the conscious rise and control of the power of Kundalini. When Kundalini is raised, it calibrates and synchronizes the chakra system, whereby the conscious mind and subconscious mind begins to respond to the superconscious mind as the true ruler of the three-faced mind substance. The subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is that part of man's mind that handles all the involuntary actions within man's existence. The subconscious mind manages the functions of all the subtler bodies and physical bodies. It is that part of the mind that handles all the functions of the physical body, from the large to the minute. It frees up the superconscious mind and the conscious mind from having to deal with these functions 24 hours a day. Although the subconscious mind does interact with the superconscious mind, it conscious with the superconscious mind and conscious mind by way of giving a direct and indirect response to its commands and actions. The superconscious mind gives directives from itself and the soul to the subconscious mind constantly to try to achieve the necessary karmic balance. The conscious mind's uncontrolled thoughts and actions creates the karmic directives to the subconscious mind that it must adhere to. Because the subconscious mind strictly adheres to the divine laws of karma, the subconscious mind's very existence pulsates to the divine law. The subconscious mind is like the great diva of mind and body. Its sole purpose is to make sure all actions are given the proper proportional karmic reaction. It is that part of man's consciousness that stores all memories of present and past lives. This record of man's thoughts and actions stored in the subconscious mind leaves signature scars on the auric body of man and becomes the karmic instruments that serve to calibrate the amounts and limitations placed on man's current life and future lives. These auric signature scars, samskaras, which are positive and negative thought forms, hang on the human aura and distort the natural flow of the cosmic energies within the aura. To give an example of the subconscious mind's functions on a purely physical level, one of the functions can be described as the process of what happens when man digests the food he eats. The subconscious mind is that part of the mind that controls how food is broken down into its lowest substance in order to extract the proper minerals and nutrition that can be distributed throughout the body to assist in maintaining the human systems. The subconscious mind also digests the mental vibrations and impressions of the food that have been placed there by those who touched, prepared, or cooked the food. These mental impressions are distributed throughout the auric system. The mental impressions act as bits of subtler cosmic energy that are discolored by positive and negative thought forms, which can be taken from many involuntary functions such as the circulation system, the respiratory system, and the nervous system, etc. The subconscious mind controls all these involuntary functions and hundreds more. Right? And the conscious mind. The conscious mind is that part of man's mind that handles the so-called conscious state of man's existence. This part of man's mind is looked upon as the active force within the mind, which is part conscious mind and various states of the unconscious mind. The conscious state of man's functions. The conscious state of man functions in a limited conscious state. By narrowing the point of focus of man's mind, the conscious mind limits access to the subconscious mind and the supraconscious mind. This limitation brings about a so-called individual state of consciousness, which serves to limit man's awareness of the whole I am and have him to focus on the aspect of the part I. This state of consciousness is the point where man begins his journey through evolution. It is the final stage of the primary state of involution and the first stage of the evolutionary journey. It is at this stage where the great forces from the Mahabindus, called Shakti powers, goes into a state of rest and reveals Shiva, that was always there, by tightly wrapping itself 3.5 times around the manifested Shiva and is now called Kundalini. This state of existence is called the Maya Shakti, the power that makes the whole into not whole. The conscious mind is the result of this power called Maya Shakti. This individualist state separates man from the lower animal kingdom and brings about the limited state of consciousness where he creates his existence in order to evolve back into the whole conscious state. This Maya Shakti helps to produce and maintain a state of the limited conscious mind, which produces a state of individualism and separation from the whole. The conscious mind of man, which man operates from and through, is a very narrow receiving point of man's mind. The physical part of man's mental receiving set is the human brain. Physical science tells us that man only uses 2 to 3% of his capacity. The metaphysician states that the etheric part of man's mental receiving set is the chakras and the nadic system. Man only uses less than 1% of his capacity. There is an emotional part to man's mental receiving apparatus that makes up his conscious mind, which is the combination of his past and present thoughts and actions. This self-consciousness separates man from the brute animalistic passions and engrossed materialistic man whose desire is only to possess as much as he can in this gross material world. The conscious mind is that part of man's mind that allows him to perceive, observe, detect, and examine the external world around him. It is also that part of the mind that has him so preoccupied with external stimuli that it closes him off from his higher consciousness. It is the conscious mind that wills all the sensory organs of the body, which produces and manifests the 5 senses, to register aspects of the following gross and subtle environments that we live and exist in. Table 5.3, external stimuli on the sensory organs. First, we have aspects of the environment on the left and external pressures of environment. So we have solids, and external pressures is liquid, vapors, and atmosphere. There's sounds and vibrations in 16,000 to 32,768 vibrations per second. Electricity, over 1 billion vibrations per second. Heat, 200 billion vibrations per second. Light, colors, 500 billion vibrations per second. And subtler aspects of light, like, for example, X-ray, over 2 trillion vibrations per second. The sensory perception of the above aspects of the environment serves to inundate the conscious mind to the point where it is constantly responding to the external pressures from the environment. The conscious mind engages in the above activities so much that it forgets that it is part of a higher and greater consciousness. The conscious mind becomes so indulged in the actions and reactions of the sensory perception data, excuse me, the conscious mind becomes so indulged in the actions and reactions of the sensory perception data that it individualizes itself to the point that it forms its own reality. This reality that the conscious mind forms for itself becomes a great distortion that serves to block the higher frequency mind substance and creates what the yogis call nivrittis, uncontrolled waves of mental modifications. This conscious mind creates an outer valence level of mental substance that develops this great mental distortion, which blocks the conscious mind from perceiving the subtler, finer frequency of mind substance. It creates a huge collage of mental thought forms that blends together and hangs on the aura of man, developing a basic character that radiates a mental attitude which shapes and molds its outer expression. This serves to limit his higher conscious mind from communicating its inspirational messages to the lower mind, and the subconscious mind, being that aspect of the mind that carries out the involuntary functions of the mind and body, always following the divine laws of God, sets limitation on the mind. Each one of the mental thought forms within this mental collage on the aura has a particular energy configuration that expresses life either positively or negatively. This collage of mental thought forms make up the outer valence layer of man's conscious mind. As stated earlier, it is this aspect of mind that keeps the conscious mind busy with responding to the waves of mental thought forms. This collage helps the conscious mind forget its connection with the higher mind and submerge itself in the activities of this lower mind. This mental collage of thought forms is a collection of thoughts that span over several reincarnations, maybe tens or hundreds or thousands of reincarnations. The collage of mental thought forms placed on the aura act as seeds of mental impressions, samskaras, that eventually blossom in the right environment as mental and physical limitations that the subconscious mind has manifested as a lesson for that particular time. The conscious mind of each man is a combination of maybe hundreds or thousands of years or lifetimes of mental impressions from the thoughts and actions of its own making. The free will of man is the poison that has contaminated the auric body of man, which is why free use of thoughts and actions without any regard to the divine laws of God. Therefore, the conscious mind falls under the illusion that it is the commander of man's mind. This attitude of the conscious mind places great limitations on man's mind and his ability to harness the inner strength of the higher self. The yogis teach that the first step towards controlling the mind is to still the conscious mind, thereby stopping all sensory perception of the conscious mind by focusing all its sensory organs down one narrow channel of thought. This limits the free will of man and gives him freedom over the limitations of the conscious mind. This serves to allow man's mind to receive the higher frequencies of mind substance and opens a pathway for the higher faculties of man to come into operation. In closing the section on the conscious mind, I would like to reference the point that one of the key components to controlling conscious mind is using the power of imagination and the power of mantra and prayer. Techniques of imagination help to mold the mind and vital energies. Mantra and prayer techniques help to purify the aura, charge the chakras with highly charged and balanced cosmic energies, and eventually activate the sacral power of Kundalini and bring about spiritual enlightenment. This ability of controlling imagination allows man to use his physical brain as a magnetic instrument to pull on subtle and gross cosmic energies through the use of vocalizing the holy mantras in a gross or subtle manner. The brain becomes a huge magnetic force when the power of imagination is controlled under deep, concentrative circumstances. All right? That completes chapter 5. See if are there any questions about the material that's covered? I have, if there's no questions, we can move into the review of the first couple of chapters. I have a question though, Nehemiah, if you can expand a little more on free will of man being the poison that has contaminated the orc body of man.
What
I understand the expression, but I've never heard free will referred to as a poison. Well, maybe I have, yeah.
what did I put down in notes? Did I mention something?
Yeah, on 37, Free Will to Freedom. Dr. Shri Yogiriji George King received an outstanding cosmic transmission, which is commonly referred to in these days as a channeling on the difference between freedom and free will. He brilliantly showed how mankind gave up freedom in order to walk the path of free will, which limited his ability to express the higher frequency of mind and cosmic energy. There are several publications from the Society that recorded and described the principles of this subject. On the original audio tape of the Cosmic Mission, Freedom to Free Will, and to book The Nine Freedoms.
Yeah, so in Mars Sector 6 and Dr. George King brilliantly laid that out. And also when you go back to the ancient teachings in Hinduism and Buddhism, and probably several other religions, it shows how one wrong action or selfish action done under free will, under your own free will, cause 1,000 to 2,000 other actions that have to happen in order to get back on the road, on the right road you was traveling before you made that action. So that is a poison to you and your progressive movement going forward. Because what it does is sidetrack you, and you have to find the right combination and go through a series of actions in order to get back where you needed to be. Dr. King also, in his lectures on Carmelite, he kept using the phrase every time he talked about it, that we had to go through the motions. You remember that?
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so going through the motions is trying to get back to the right karmic balance. You know, because you see a problem and you can easily go in and correct that problem, but you may cause 1,000 other problems by correcting that problem. So that's why the great cosmic masters end up having to be the so-called bodhisattvas of Earth by taking on a human form, coming through the womb of a woman, taking on human form, and then going through a series of actions in order to integrate themselves with us and create the right karmic projection for mankind by being a part of us. And that's going through the motions. That's the way I understand it. And when you go back and read all the accounts of all these great cosmic masters that had to come to Earth, that's what they was doing. Very slowly, methodically, weaving the right frame of mind, the right level of consciousness that we need to think about things that we would never have thought about before. We begin to think about. Maybe a small section of the world actually thought about it. When you look at the American Indians, the way they go and they base, at least in the past, they base all their actions on what the Mother Earth would need instead of what they would need. It's not too many people on the earth did that other than the Indians and the Africans. When you go back and read history, right? You don't hear of too many other cultures doing that. So these great cosmic masters, they come in and they play stuff like that so they become a wide world thing. And now it's all about the environment in modern times among a large population of the world, you know. Did we lose the win?
It looks like it.
Yeah. So that's what I mean by poisoning the free will, actually poisoning our common position by taking on free will, by taking on a selfish position and not thinking about all the other people around us and what we're going to affect by making that action. Hello?
Yeah, I just lost internet in the office.
Nehemiah, just see if you can just open it up to questions because
Yeah, the beeping was coming from the closet. It looks like the router's down.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we open for questions. Anyone have any questions? You can ask questions.
can they ask the question or they got to type it in the chat?
Yeah, they have to type it inside the chat. Win lost internet where he's at. No one has any questions?
I think the issue is the text went down as well.
Did it go down?
Yeah, I can't see it. When he lost internet, everything came down.
Can you see my text I just did?
Yes, I can see you asked any questions in the chat.
Yeah, so it's up. Joanne came back. Joanne came back.
All right. I think I'm back. Okay, I'm hanging up.
All right.
Store chat. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. I temporarily lost internet. Where I am here. All right. It appears to be up and running now.
We should look at that section we just read, look at it and see if, and look at what we said in the new book.
Ah, okay. Referring to mind or free will?
Mind, the consciousness. And just I'm saying, we don't have to do it now, but I'm saying when we read through that to edit the book, see if we incorporated that as well.
Okay.
I think it read pretty well there.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to go into more detail about some parts of it and I had some questions about. I had some follow-up questions, but I didn't hear what you said at the end part though.
Well, I just kind of reiterated what I was saying about how what the Buddha said and how Dr. King really defined it when he started talking about the various missions that the adepts and the cosmic masters went on. How they had to go through the motions in order to bring about the right karmic balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all about just using these wonderful, beautiful spiritual powers.
Mm-hmm.
It's about going and correcting all the wrong that was done and creating that balance so that it can be understood not to go that way. It's almost like a child seeing a flame and looking at the flame and say, "What a beautiful flame!" And the first thing they want to do is go and touch it and feel it and taste it.
Mm-hmm.
But the mother and the father have to let them know that you cannot touch that. You cannot taste it. You can, you have to make them understand that they cannot go in that direction. The flame have to be used properly. Have to be used in the proper settings. That understanding have to be ingrained in them so that they don't feel the pain of putting their hand in the fire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when like the Buddha said, you do one action and 1,000 other actions come into play in order to get back to where you were before, in order to create that right karmic balance. So then, in other words, you have to begin to understand why it was wrong to make that one action. And you have to go through a series of steps to bring about that understanding. And that's what they teach us in ancient teachings. And that's what Dr. George King and Mars Sector 6 and the Master Theorists were saying by going through the motions. That they had to go through the motions. They had to do what they did, you know, in order to correct the karmic projection that mankind had to move towards or go towards, and close the doors on that, on those, you know, that ignorance causes us to do certain things.
So for mankind, was that, I don't know if initial is correct, but was that initial wrong action choosing free will?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the consequences or ripples of that action was
Every,
everything over the past million years or so, 2 million years ago?
yeah. So that's simple to say, but it's very, when you think about it, it's a lot to take in when you concentrate on it. You know, so the whole Mr. Constitution of Man would have been totally different.
Right.
You know, it'd been totally different because the gross physical plane of existence would not be utilized the way it's utilized now. It wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't be utilized in this. I mean, mental consciousness would not have had to fall this far and this and to this gross level, you know, of hammer nail and, you know, hammer nail wood, you know, hiding from the atmosphere, the pressures of the atmosphere. It wouldn't have to fall this low.
So trying to understand what could that decision have been? It's on a collective scale. It's the law says to do this, and we just said nope, or we just kind of.
I mean, you have freedom or free will,
Right?
and you made and someone made the choice, or collective consciousness made the choice to take free will, and another chose freedom. Those who chose freedom became the devatas, the divas, the cosmic masters, the planets, the solar systems, the galaxies. They chose freedom, and we chose free will, and we became the microbes on those planets. That's encased or embodied embodied ourselves in a limited form of consciousness. So, I mean, that's the big difference.
And when you were talking about the 1,000 corrective actions that are needed to fix that one wrong action, or that are triggered by that one wrong action, I was reminded of what Mars Sector 6 said in the 9 freedoms. I think it's around maybe midway through the freedoms. He's talking about that your vibration, your makeup or something has been altered by these vibrations. And he's saying, no, stay from the path, do not depart from the path. But because of these vibrations, because you've been changed in this way, your fall will be doubly hard. And I'm thinking, okay, so we've just listening to the 9 freedoms, for example, and being able to receive that transmission. Several corrective actions had to have been made prior to that in past lives. And then you listen, and then you come across the 9 freedoms, or you're allowed to come across the 9 freedoms. And this is in an ultra corrective action. Would that be fine to describe it like that? And
yeah.
And then you are now being changed and altered by hearing this transmission, by receiving this wisdom. What does that do to the individual and to their karmic pattern, so much so that any action taken after that has to strictly adhere to freedom, otherwise the repercussions will be twice as bad for you. Does that make sense?
There's always rules and regulations to every action. You know, so it's all, and then there's consequences. You know, if you, you know, I mean, the whole, and it seems crazy that people don't see that, because it's all around them. It's all around us. If you want a pure water, then you need to make sure that it's H2O and not H2ON. You know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
so it's just that simple. You know, if you cooking something, or you manufacturing plastic or wood or whatever, if you don't bring all the right ingredients together, then it's not going to work. If you don't mix the concrete properly, it's just not going to be strong enough. That's why you have different grades of concrete. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the PSI in the concrete is, you know, it can't be 1,500 on certain things, can't be 2,500. It have to be 5,000 or whatever. And inside the concrete, when you go to build, you just can't use a steel rebar of 3. You might have to use 4, 5, or 7. You know, so in order to reinforce that, it's just rules to allow something to stay in place and gain experience for a particular time. And it's just the rules. And once you enact that timetable, then that particular embodied consciousness of materia have to go through the motions and collect the experience that's needed there. You know, so now they can abruptly destroy that by their own actions, but it may take several lifetimes to get back there if they make the wrong move. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's that's just the law. It's just that's how things work. The only reason why we're able to communicate the way we're communicating right now is because of laws. You know, we have tapped into the laws that was placed here by God. I know scientists say, well, you know, scientists only discovered the laws, and that's why the electronics, the internet, all these things are working, because they discovered how to transmit picture, sound, you know, through open space thousands of miles away. It's just everything works by the law of karma. You know, and they tapped into the rules and karma. The more you're able to use these laws, to tap in these laws, to manipulate these laws in order to do what you need to do, the more advanced you become, the greater experience you can gain. And it's all about following the laws. You know, now your actions in utilizing the law builds up either positive karma or negative karma.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. And when you build up too much negative karma, then you have to correct that. But if you move to the position where you are creating positive karma 90 to 100% of the time, then you move forward. Your consciousness is allowed to expand, and you become an intricate part of the whole. Is the difference between an ant and a human being, the difference between a human being and a cosmic master, the difference between a cosmic master and a planet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how they operate within the law of karma.
So it would seem that the more you adhere to the law, the more you're held accountable by the law, because the more I guess power you're given, or the more privilege. I don't want to say privilege, but I guess, or the more your consciousness expands.
Yes,
so you're
that's how, I mean, an ascended master is someone who works within the confined laws of karma. Therefore, you'll never see a ascended master come out and just blow up everything. It just don't happen. It just don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because they work within, they're part of, I mean, they become devatas. They're part of manipulating karma for the world, for mankind, for the solar system. That's why we refer to them as avatars or cosmic masters. Dr. George King said, once you move karma, once you move Kundalini to Arjuna, to the Christ center, you become an avatar, because you understand the laws of karma at that point. And you know that to go outside of the law of karma will bring about, you can see all the terrible things it will bring about.
Mm-hmm.
So your whole existence become to work within those laws of karma.
So my next question also incorporates Luna's question that she had mentioned here. Like in the text we just read, we looked at supra, sub, and conscious mind, and so we looked at supra conscious mind as when the superconscious mind is able to poke through and reach the conscious mind, we call that intuition. And basically the pinnings or pingings of our higher consciousness of our soul talking to us and giving us directions how to adhere to karma. And then we have the subconscious mind, working as that great diva, which strictly adheres to the laws of karma, but is fed by the thoughts and actions of the conscious mind, as well as by the intuitions from the superconscious mind. And so my question is how do we recognize that in our daily lives, like you're just mentioning, that strictly adhering to the laws of karma, that is freedom. And here Luna asked the question, what are the initial steps needed to be taken to choose freedom over free will? Like, how do we recognize freedom in our daily lives and adhere to it? How do we choose freedom in our daily lives?
So everyone is I am. And I am is the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirit creates a soul as its traveling body through evolution. In all of our quiet moments, we know what is right.
Mm-hmm.
We know it. We fight against it, but we know it. And that's why we toss the ball back and forth in our head. Well, we know it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in every true doctrine, no matter what religion you coming from, if it's a religion that talks about the absolute, the God, the Jehovah, Jehovah is the galaxy. If it talks about these great divine beings, and every religion always go back to that we are we are the ministers or servants of everyone. So selfless actions is usually the right karmic actions to take. Before you do something, if you think about how it's going to affect everyone around you, that's the right action that you make after you have thought about that, and then you go in that direction in a selfless action and not a selfless action, not a selfish action. Because most right karmic actions are actions done with as Dr. King said, it's simple. It's done as a thinking man would do it. You know, because to think is to see what's good for all and not what's good for just you. You know, so you know, and it sounds simple, but it really is just that simple. You know, and you can see it in the actions of mothers or fathers, you know, that really love their kids. You know, before they feed themselves, they'll feed their child. You know, before they go to do anything that's going to benefit them on a level of pleasure or whatever, they're going to make sure that the whole house is taken care of, and then they will take care of themselves. It's those selfless acts that work more within the positive framework of karma. And karma only means actions, but the right laws of actions, or the right actions within creation. You know, but when you make the wrong action, you have to make a series of actions to get back to the right action in order to undo what you did. And I think in the 9 freedoms, they talk about transmigration and transmutation.
Right.
You know, and that's what that's about. That you have to correct all the wrong actions that you did. You know, in Mahatma Gandhi's one of his books, and they put it in his movie too. If anyone's seen the movie, and they made it kind of simple, but it was still talking about those transmuting wrong actions, where the man came to him and threw the bread at him and said, "Eat." When Mahatma Gandhi was going on a hunger strike, he told him to eat. He said, "I don't want your death on me, because I killed a Muslim child, and I know I'm going to hell." And Mahatma said, "I know a way out of hell." And he said, "Find a child, a Muslim child that you killed, you know, the same size or whatever that you killed, and take that child and raise that child as your own. You know, a child that has no mother, that's been left out there because of all the killing and whatever." And he said, "But you must raise that child as a Muslim." See, because that child was born into Muslim, you know, you must give that child what his parents would have gave him. And he said, "That's your way out of hell." And can you think about the thousands and thousands of actions he would have had, and the sacrifice he would have had to give up in order to move from his Hindu faith to the Muslim faith and make sure that child is raised as a Muslim, as that child was supposed to be. So, that's transmutation, And remember Dr. King said it have to be some type of sacrifice. You have to give up the free will in order to find freedom. The same way the Mother Earth makes sure that every living thing, from the plant life, the fish, the minerals in the ground, the insects, the animals, the human, receive the protection of her atmosphere. And the timetable to gain experience once they come on either the physical plane, the astral plane, or the etheric plane, or the mental plane, they are allowed to gain that experience so that they can move forward, irrespective of who you are. If you're a murderer, black, white, green, whatever, doesn't matter what religion you are, they allow you the Mother Earth allow you that space to move forward, to gain that necessary experience so that you can go on to the next life and gain higher ground. That's true love, service, and right karmic action, where you don't judge anyone. You give everyone the opportunity to grow and become who they are.
Hearing you describe that, it struck me as how antithetical or contrary to the kind of individualistic upbringing we have here in the Western society it is, to take into account the consequences of your actions on everyone else and everything else around you. Be it as simple as, what are the consequences of me throwing this piece of litter on the street? How will that affect people? Or smoking or drinking this drink, or, all the way to having a child with this particular person. What are the consequences of me pursuing this pleasure, this moment of pleasure, that can cause ripples hundreds, maybe even thousands of years down the line? And then as you were talking further, it made me think, I'm slowly to understand why service is a aspect of the freedom. You first got to have that bravery to face yourself and look at yourself and diagnose yourself and say, you know what, if I keep going on like this, and that does take bravery to face yourself and say, I keep going on like this, I'm just going to create more problem after problem after problem in my life and the lives of people around me. How can I break free from this? And then once you start that self-examination, which you've taught us to do, to sit back and examine yourself and see where you fall short, it takes real love to realize, to look at people without judgment and to see them as a part of yourself, and then to really take that step towards freedom, which is service. Like you said, all things do in creation, everything serves. And that is how freedom is expressed and employed.
Yeah, correct. That's right. It's just like the
service is the rock. Service is the jewel in the rock of attainment. It makes sense. It really makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. It's like there was a show, and it was a poor example of in a lot of cases, but in a lot of cases it got things wrong. The series on Kung Fu of mysticism or Buddhism, but there's one scene where the main character went to his master and said, why do you feed this man who tried to overthrow our ashram? he comes to the door begging for rice, you're gonna feed him, he's gonna become strong enough to come back and try to overtake us again. And his master turned to him and said, he said, when that man walks out into the something similar to, he said, when that man walks out into the sunshine, does the sun refuse to shine on him? Does the earth refuse to hold him up? Does the wind refuse to blow on him? You know, he said, these great beings or great things, if they don't deny him, who am I to deny him? You know, and we got to remember that we are, you know, there's only one life in the whole universe, multiple universes, and that's God. You know, there's only one source where all intelligence, all consciousness come from. So we, you know, we are a part of a whole, you know, regardless of where each one of us are. So that's why we need to help each other, you know, move forward. And the great ones understand that. That's why they will stay where they are until a certain percentage get up, wake up, and move forward.
You know, and Flo says something interesting in the chat. She said, by law, the wrong can't be undone. And Flo, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're getting at, and that is true. But at the same time, you know, they might mention that earlier. Was talking about, we gave the example of Mahatma Gandhi talking to that Hindu man and telling him to transmute the wrong that he did by raising that child as a Muslim. And I think when we start thinking about, when you self-examine and you look back at your past and you start recognizing, you know, all the wrong actions that you made, and that's actually a practice that Nehemiah gave to us. He says, at the end of the day, sit down and think about all the actions you took throughout that day, and, you know, take note of the mistakes that you made throughout that day. Think about how you can correct them, and then from the following day, you know, plan about how you can correct those wrong actions and improve yourself little by little, day by day. But in that self-reflection, I think we tend to get caught into this trap of, oh my God, how can I undo this wrong? How can I right my wrongs? I see that can be a trap that can get us stuck in guilt and remorse and in a downward spiral. But in that transition that Mars Sector 6 taught us, going from transmigration to transmutation, and like what Nehemiah was talking about, we look back at our wrongs and we think about the corrective actions we can take to not undo them, because those wrongs were done and we can't go back in time and undo it, but we can take that energy, take that negative samskara, and transmute it into something higher. The example of what Mahatma Gandhi gave to the Hindu, saying, here's a way to keep you out of hell, get you out of hell, is to transmute that negative action of murder into an ultra positive action of raising that child into a proper Muslim to grow up and live in that pathway that he should have followed, was born into for that lifetime.
Yeah, what the Hindus and the Buddhists and most mystic teachings tell us, that let it become a seed for something good.
Right.
So that wrong, you can't undo what you did, but you can allow that to be a teachable moment to change the direction in which you're going. And it becomes a seed for all good actions going forward in the present and future. You know, so it's just as simple as you see a nice plate or dish or cup is all filthy and dirty, and you go and you put it in the water and you wash it and you scrub it and you get it clean and everything, and then you put it you let it dry out, and now it's back to where it was before. Or if it's broken, you fix it. You go through a series of actions, a series of motions in order to make it look the way it used to look. And you keep doing it until it gets better and better. So let that wrong action become a seed for 1,000 or 10,000 good actions. So that's what we're taught. You know, you knock down a tree, but you have the seeds of the tree. So you take the seeds of the limbs and you plant it in fertile ground, and you allow it to produce 10 million more seeds from that wrong action. So that's the difference.
Flo, I don't understand what your question is. Do we compromise with the entity? I'm not sure what you mean by that. You may be referring to something Nehemiah said earlier, but I'm not sure what exactly your question is. I wanted to focus on. I felt like focusing on free will just now. That's honestly that's one of my biggest struggles. I know what to do. I know what I should do. As the Bible says, that the law of God is written upon the hearts of everyone. Everyone knows what the law is, and it's what is right, not what is legal, what is right. And sometimes you choose free will about yogi. I know I'm supposed to get up early in the morning and do my practices, but sometimes I'm like, hey, I just turn over and go back to sleep. That's choosing free will over sacrificing a bit of sleep to gain some freedom. So it's a constant struggle, at least for myself. I know that. And so when I read that note there, that line there, it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that just really struck and spoke to me. So I wanted to talk about that for a bit. Let's see. Next, I wanted to do a review of, and if you guys have any follow-up questions or anything you'd like to discuss, feel free to post in the chat. And if you guys would prefer a more of a discussion type modality as opposed to just reading through an entire chapter or two for 2 hours. Maybe I read a couple of sections and then ask some follow-up questions on the material to have a kind of discussion going between Nehemiah and myself. Or if there's other ways you would like to be more included into discussion, let me know what type of format you guys feel would be better to help you to digest the material and to follow along with each session. Let's see. And so previously we've covered chapter 1, which is Introduction to the Mystical Techniques of Prayer Using Prana. We looked at the receiving and transmitting instrument, which we said in the gross physical body is the transmitting instrument is the brain, but in prayer we're using the entire auric structure as a receiving and transmitting instrument. We discussed why prayer, the meaning of prayer. We defined what prayer is. This is the manipulation of subtle energy. We looked at a brief mystic understanding of prayer, and we talked about the power of prayer. And we briefly introduced the mystic prayer technique and talked how it produces clairvoyant vision, in that it is a ultra positive spiritual action where we are radiating spiritual energy through the aura in a way that it may not have done so in maybe the past several lives or 100,000 years. And in doing that, we are purifying the nadis, we're cleansing the aura and allowing for more a higher quality of energy to flow through the auric structure, thereby bringing about a merging or union of the senses, the physical sense, gross physical senses, the astral senses, and the etheric senses, which yield um, higher qualities of psychic ability or extrasensory perception. We go into more detail about that later on. And in the text, particularly where it's outlined the 10 senses, which is figure 2-2, and mapping out the 10 senses and 10 sensory organs. So in chapter 2, we actually go deeper into, we went deeper into the ancient mystic knowledge of prayer. We talked about the mystic power of prayer and the intellectual mental perception, which yields into visual imagination and visualization. We talked about controlled imagination and visualization and how it's used as a pathway for the energy through invocation. We looked at the controlled breath techniques and pranayama, and so how the pranayama is used in the prayer technique. We talk about how mudra and mantra is used. So this comes later on, and the controlled body movements in prayer through mudra. We looked at table 2-1, the sense organs and the senses of man. And so that did not come out properly in the text. And so one of the first illustrations was of the mouth. And this one wasn't clear in the text, but we talked about the top lip represents the power of Shiva's stillness in creation. We talked the tongue represents nada power that flows from Kundalini, and we looked at the bottom lip represents the Shakti power in action. Yeah, that's the mouth diagram of Shiva. Table 2-1 was a table. Then we moved into, let me shift back here. Next time, I'll have this set up in OneNote like I did before, and I'll have the text on one side and illustrations on the other, so it'll be easier to follow. I won't be switching back and forth like I am now. We looked at figure 2-2, which is mapping out the 10 senses and 10 sense organs. That is this illustration. All right, so we looked at, there's a table that goes into detail about it as well, but the illustration has the number one, the 5 initial senses that we are all most familiar with. The sight or visual perception. We have number 2, hearing, perception of sound. Number 3, smell, perception of odor. Number 4, taste is perception of defining flavor. And number 5, touch is the sense of perception of experiencing the physical state of another object. And then we have 6. Here's the abilities known as additional sense and the ability to translate consciousness and thoughts into the spoken word through the tongue, a sense organ of the body. And then we have 7 here, generation is known as an additional sense, which builds the attraction to the opposite sex and the sense organ that it operates from is the genitalia and is instrument for procreation. Number 8, we have excretion, is known as additional sense in its ability to translate consciousness and thoughts into the spoken words through the tongue and sense organ. Oh, no, actually, no, that's not correct. Excretion. Number 9, grasping, ability to pick up an object. The consciousness perceives, the hands of the sense organs of grasping. And 10, movement. This additional sense is the ability to move through the physical realm, and it's illustrating the feet and legs and arms, ability to move through the physical realm with the use of the sense organ of feet. Switch back again. And then we looked at another table next, which breaks down the 10 senses and its associated sensory organs. And we looked at the impurity traits of the lower 3 chakras, and that was a figure that did not come out properly in that edition of the book. So this is what we looked at, this diagram, sorry. And these impurity traits we looked at from the Muladhara, the base of the spine chakra, the sex chakra, and the solar plexus chakra, going from bottom up. At the base of the spine, we have desire, anger, greed, delusion. At the sex chakra, there's pride, attachment, hatred, passion, malice, and jealousy. And at the solar plexus chakra, we have selfishness, fear, envy, lust, laziness, possession, deceit, revenge, guilt, and cravings. And those are the impurities or the negative samskaras that express themselves primarily in the lower centers. You see here written in bold here, the auric body is that subtle envelope of the soul that moves man's consciousness from one incarnation to the next. The auric body holds the energy signature of every thought, word, deed, and experience you have ever lived through. So throughout all of your lives, all of your incarnations, every thought, every action, every deed, every word, every experience is stored within the auric body. Then from the impurity traits of the lower 3 chakras, we looked at figure 2-4, which is Raja Yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga. The illustration in the book is similar to this one. The format is a little different because it has the figure sitting in Padma in the middle, and then you have the 4 limbs on one side, and then limbs 5 to 8 on the other, going up in a type of pyramid type fashion. But the information is the same. We have these the 4 limbs. The first 4 limbs of Raja Yoga are the physical, moral, and purifying aspects. First one being yama, restraint. Number 2, niyama, observance. Number 3, asana, the seat or posture. And number 4, pranayama, energy control. And then the next 4, numbers 5 through 8, are the mental, psychic, and spiritual aspects of Raja Yoga. And that is number 5, pratyahara, or withdrawal. Number 6, dharana, concentration. Number 7, dhyana, contemplation. And number 8, samadhi, or deep meditation. The 8 limbs of yoga work In concert together, the first limb of restraint control begins to clear the auric bodies of negative samskaras, which helps to prepare you for the second limb of observance or devotion to a higher power. The third limb will help bring about a sound body by aligning the life force energies within the subtle bodies and physical body, and the third being asana. This brings you to the fourth limb, pranayama, which is bringing about control over the life force within the body, allowing to merge the physical, astral, and etheric senses at will through the manipulation of the pranic life forces. Now, the previous stated four limbs must be applied in order to bring about the fifth limb of the withdrawal of all sensory receptions and taking complete control of mind, i.e., sixth, seventh, and eighth limbs, which are concentration, contemplation, and meditation. Without the control over the passions, the practitioners will never purify the nadis or mind or chakras in order to bring about benefits that come from these techniques. He or she will continue to be the slave of his physical cravings that manifest themselves in the uncontrolled passion. So, Luna, this goes kind of back to your question. All right, initial steps must be taken to choose freedom over free will. In the ancient yoga teachings Nehemiah has mentioned, we're given those steps to take. In fact, it's illustrated here by Mr. Nehemiah Davis. The step to achieving freedom, the step to achieving the dissolution of consciousness, the step to achieving the goal of yoga, being union with God. And we're told that we're given certain rules, right? Where the rules being, first, we must practice yama, restraint. And as we develop restraint, we then move into niyama, observance. Then we develop and practice observance within our daily lives, i.e., religious practice or bhakti type yoga. We move into asana, seat or posture, which is generating a sound body, which is needed for the success of meditation, and then move into pranayama, energy control. And we're told that these first four steps must be practiced, strictly adhered to, and in a sense mastered before we can move into 5, 6, 7, and 8. And again, that's laid out in order: pratyahara, dharana, concentration; dhyana, contemplation; and samadhi, deep meditation. To skip those first initial steps and try and move into meditation or concentration is breaking the rules in that it will cause damage and harm to ourselves, as was stated earlier at the end of the section here. Without the control over the passions, the practitioners will never purify the nadis or minds of chakras in order to bring about benefits that come from these techniques. He or she will continue to be the slave of his physical cravings that manifest themselves in the uncontrolled passions. Those impurity traits that we looked at earlier, if they're not burnt up in those first four steps of yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama, will take those impurity traits up into the higher centers and cause damage to our auric structures. So we're not given these rules as sorts of thou shalt and thou shalt nots in order to limit us or just to make things difficult for us. We're given these guideposts by the rishis, great ones who have gone before us, as to help us in our path to develop properly and holistically. Freedom is following these rules and adhering to this system of Raja Yoga, of union with God through the practice of Raj, strictly to accomplish the predetermined goal of Samadhi. Free will is ignoring that and doing it whatever way you want and creating these thousands of correction actions that will have to be taken upon by you at a later point at some point in your spiritual development. In fact, we're told that you will be stopped at a certain point in your spiritual development, and you'll have to go back and make those corrections before you go forward. I think Dr. George King talked about that when he was talking about some of the fake mystics who, rather than learning restraint, observance, and control over the sex, would do things like castration and be fake mystics to try and take a route around developing that restraint and control. Is that correct, Nehemiah? I think I'm misquoting that in some parts.
No, that is correct.
That's correct.
They used to take on that when that's not the thing. Is you're supposed to kill out desire and lust mentally. What good is it?
Mm-hmm.
If you're still having those cravings, you have to learn to control it. Because that's energy, that's wasted energy.
Right.
Having a craving, but you can't do anything with it. You can't redirect it. Having the urge and being able to redirect the urge, the energy of the urge is the thing that allows you to control the energy, because it's a sacred energy. Ojas, which is the energy, the subtle energy behind sexual or lust. You have to, that's a part of your kundalini. You have to learn to take that energy and place it back in the upper chakras or the brain center in order to bring about control. But if you kill the instrument that utilizes the energy at the lower chakras, then how can you raise that energy properly?
Mm-hmm.
It's just simple mathematics. It's simple.
And so we look. Correct, Luna. Sincere restraint is then a change in character and perspective, not through a biological modification or manipulation. That's correct. So one of the
Remember, mental, I don't mean to cut you off, but remember, I always tell you how do you manipulate energy and matter?
through mind.
Through mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to control your mind. Everything starts from mind. Mind is the seed of all actions, whether it's mental actions, emotional actions, or physical actions. And whether those physical actions are on the etheric level, astral level, or physical level, it still starts with mind. Because mind is the molder, it molds and shapes that energy into expression. So you have to gain control over your mind. You cannot have control and restraint over anything if you don't control your mind. And the mind is the motivating factor behind everything.
Mm-hmm. And that's why the first limb is yama, restraint.
Yes.
It's the control and restraint from what? Those impurities, from anger, malice, jealousy, lust, passion, greed, envy, and hatred. You do not allow those thoughts, that type of energy, any space within your aura, within your mind, within your personality, within your character. And if you remove something, you have to fill that space with something else. And that's why in the next line, it talks about bringing about a virtuous and moral living through this type of control and restraint. You feed your higher self, which is why the emphasis is given to us on these study and adhering to the teachings. And you'll see it in people around you, those who indulge in social media and in TV and in romance novels and things like that. It fills their mind, it fills their consciousness, and it shapes their worldview, it shapes their perception, and they continue to attract and bring that type of energy to them. But in studying the teachings and adhering to the teachings and then removing certain negative things from your life, you are reducing the verities, you're reducing the creation of these negative samskaras, and you are feeding the positive and higher samskaras, allowing you to gain increasing access to the higher aspects, the higher states of mind, the higher vibrations of mind.
Yeah, it's simple practice. Swami Sivananda gave his students, if they had a particular woman come around them that they felt a sexual urge or lust after, he told them every time that woman came around them, to begin to think about the love of his mother and his sister, and see them as a mother and a sister, as someone's mother and someone's sister. And you raise the vibrations of that to a different level, because you cannot be in the same space of, of that, thinking, the purity of a mother and how you feel about your mother, how you feel about your sister, so the vibrations are raised, and you gain, and more you begin to gain control over that. He said, even if you had like a teacher that you aspire to, a female teacher, you think about that person because you have the most respect for that person, and that's how you begin to manipulate those urges. If you have anger, you think about something opposite of anger, or of something good, or just find the opposite to that, and shift your mind to the opposite of that until you gain control, until it has no room to grow. Those things have no room to grow. And you get to a point where you can lock it up and not allow it. It has no seeds to grow on. In other words, it has no negative samskaras to grow on, because you replace. Also, mantra. Mantra is coding. When you chant the holy mantra, you code the aura with that mantra, and you throw off the negative samskaras, and the only ones that hang is the ones that you absolutely have to go through the motions with. So that's why you chant mantra, to code your aura, because the mantra has an effect on the energy, its substance, and the aura, where it spins the aura, and how the aura to create a screen of protection, but it spins off all the loose negative samskaras there that have scarred your aura already, and it allows your vibrations, your consciousness to rise to a different level. So a physical way, or a psychic mental way, or psychic physical way of doing that is what Sivananda gave to us, in shifting the consciousness to a higher thing when you have these lust, desires, or whatever that come over you. Changing the perspective, in other words.
Okay. So I hope everyone was able to get out of this discussion, going back to Luna's initial question, initial steps we need to take in to choose freedom over free will. Here's part of that answer. First step, yama. Second step, niyama, which leads you to bravery, love, service, and enlightenment, the first four of the 9 freedoms. I did not get to cover everything I want to cover today, but we covered everything that was supposed to be covered, so that's all right. We have any final questions or comments before we close out today's session?
The third step, you didn't mention asana. Dr. King gave probably the best, probably gave one of the best definitions that I heard.
Right.
It is the seat of power. It's a position, you position yourself to receive the power of God. And that's when you take control, when you restrain, take control over your thoughts and actions. And then you go into this, you go into the pranayama, where you observe God in everything and everybody. And then you position yourself in asanas, and the different asanas. When you go and sit to in a lotus or one of the asanas, you have positioned your life, your thoughts, your everything to receive the power of God. Because why? You created a pathway by controlling the basic emotions, and through your own actions. Now you can sit, be still, and know that I am God. And that's the third limb. But you can't get there until you go through yama and the yama by the right thought and action and observance of God in everything.
Okay. There's no any final questions or comments? All right. So I'm going to close today's session, as I usually do, with prayer. But in celebration of Mr. Nehemiah Davis's birthday tomorrow, let us close out today's session with reciting a prayer for our beloved spiritual teacher, mentor, and guru, Sir Nehemiah Davis. If there are any other additional questions or comments, you can feel free to send them to us via email. Mystic Knowledge Center, all one word, @gmail.com. And if you're okay with us answering the question in a subsequent session, please let us know in the email, or if you would have us answer it privately through the email, let us know and we'll do that as well. All right, let me see if I can get all of this on the screen. Yeah, that's good enough, right? And this is a prayer that I wrote for our teacher some years ago. If you would like a copy of it to use for your own personal use, just send me an email and I can share that with you. Right. Blessed is our beloved spiritual teacher, mentor, guru, and friend, Sir Nehemiah Davis. O divine and wondrous spirit, O everlasting Lord of hosts, we come before you now in all humility to uplift our beloved spiritual guru, Sir Nehemiah Davis, at this time. O everlasting spirit, great is the love and sacrifice of this one who tirelessly gives of himself, so that we may be delivered from the darkness of our ignorance into the all-embracing light of God. O wondrous Brahma, send forth your mighty healing power to Sir Nehemiah, so that he may be lifted up, so that he may be made strong, so that he may continue to radiate thy love and light unto all the world. Thrice blessed is this wise one who was found and left and given of his very heart to man, so that he may see, and seeing know, and knowing act, and acting become that which he should be. O divine creator of all this wonder, shed thy mighty beams upon us now, so that we might be better equipped to devote ourselves in lasting service to all. O wondrous Brahma, blessed is our beloved spiritual guru, Sir Nehemiah Davis, for all that he has done and continues to do for mankind throughout his lifetime. And Almighty Power Brahma, blessed is this great champion of light, for that she is now. O God, a divine will be done. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attendance and participation. Do stay tuned to MeetUp and your email for announcements for subsequent sessions. There should be a class next week, but the following Sunday I may be out of town, but we'll find out. I'll let you know. Again, if any questions or comments, you can feel free to email them to us at Mystic Knowledge Center, all one word, at gmail.com. And that should be it. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. And happy birthday, Nehemiah.
Happy birthday, Nehemiah.
Thank you.
And